Alphabet, a PC game developed by Keita Takahashi and Adam Saltzman in 2013, is, in a few words, a very singular experience. Like the other games Mr. Takahashi developed, Alphabet is both simple and elegant in its design. That being said, this might be the least explored Keita Takahashi developed game that's commercially available. It's a very short game. In fact, my first playthrough will likely be quicker than this video, clocking in at about 5 minutes. During the development, Keita Takahashi expressed that he knew this would be quite a short game, but it was meant to be simple and fun. Although the content in this game is quite limited, I think it offers a unique insight into the mind of Keita Takahashi at the time of its development. To summarize the gameplay, players move letters from a starting point on the left side of the screen to the end point on the right by holding down the corresponding letters. There are a few different obstacles: pits, shifting floors, cliff faces, and walls, all of which are conquered by jumping, which is achieved by lifting your finger from a letter. A few mechanics were included to help the player get to the end of each level. In this example, I only use the K key to push the letters in front of it forward. I use the W key to jump walls, thus clearing the level. In later levels, with more letters to push, multiple keys must be pressed to push the pack forward, and oftentimes many letters need to be stacked upon one another to clear an obstacle to advance. The gradual incline of these challenges is quite interesting in a game so short and succeeds in keeping the gameplay fresh over the course of a playthrough. Other than the physical obstacles, the true challenge is managing all the letters in later levels. To aid the player while they're fumbling across the keyboard, fruits are placed among the level which turn all letters into the letter that first touched the fruit. As a byproduct, a poop is created, which serves as an obstacle to be hopped over. Showing all facets of natural human life was somewhat of a theme in Mr. Takahashi's work at this point in his career. In Tenya Wanya Teens, we see kids doing everything from brushing their teeth to using the bathroom. In Nobi Nobi Boy, we see growth through consumption. The representation of human biological functions is interesting when compared to other video games of the era, which largely refused to show the player doing anything banal or uncouth unless it was in a strictly comedic context. I can't help but think this freedom to express these concepts was directly correlated with Mr. Takahashi's departure from Bandai Namco. Alphabet was created as a Kickstarter milestone reward for the LA Game Space. According to their website, LA GameSpace was a non-profit organization which showcased video games in the same way a museum would exhibit visual art, featuring installations of both contemporary and historical games alongside artist residencies and workshops. This seems like a very natural fit for Keita Takahashi, as he would be unhampered by these larger corporate entities. The ideas and concepts behind his games could be much more self-directed and less whitewashed. Stylistically, Alphabet is congruent with Mr. Takahashi's other games. It's non-violent, whimsical, bright, and cheery. When I say the game isn't whitewashed, I'm referring to the feeling of freedom, the freedom to cut down on any superfluous game design element. Alphabet is raw, but in that raw presentation, it executes its idea very well. The visuals are crisp, memorable, and easily identifiable in such a way that the letters distinguish themselves enough to become mascots for the game, analogous to how the prince is a mascot for Katamari. The mechanics are intuitive enough that the game never tells you how to do anything, and a player can easily complete the game without having to stop and look up external information, which is very relevant in this case because there almost is no external information about this game. The music, which was provided by Asuka Takahashi, is wonderful and daring. I enjoyed her rendition of the Alphabet song so very much, so much so that it was stuck in my head even after playing. I say the music was daring because the one song that was included had to ride the fine line between never becoming annoying or boring, which is quite hard to do. Even after multiple playthroughs, the endearing quality remained. I got the chance to ask a few questions to Adam Saltzman, who programmed the game, and the question I was most interested in asking was also the question he gave the most interesting answer to. I asked, quote, "Did it start as sort of a convention game meant to be played with multiple people, since I knew Keita has a 26-button controller, or as a form of an educational game for children learning to type, or some mix of both?" To which Adam replied, quote, It wasn't originally designed to be a party game or gallery game, but after we built it, it seemed like a good fit. Actually, Keita had designed another gallery game called Tenya Wanya Teens, so maybe he was thinking about public spaces. Honestly, knowing what Keita is thinking is not always super easy to guess." End quote. This interested me to no avail because after learning so much about Mr. Takahashi's artistic output, I do think his ideas come from a very different place than traditional game design historically has come from, and I can't help but see parallels between his work. To me, Alphabet doesn't just relate to Keita Takahashi's work in game design, but his interest in designing a playground. While this seems to be an ambitious undertaking, Mr. Takahashi had a very clear concept of what he wanted in such a space. In a 2006 interview with Gamasutra, Mr. Takahashi briefly described his vision of the playground as, quote, "one that's soft and with lots of blocky shapes, and a place where kids can't really get hurt. Very colorful, where kids can roll around and be free, but it's probably okay if they occasionally get hurt too." End quote. Later in 2009, plans were announced to start work on a playground in Nottingham, England. Although the project was later put on hold, iterations of the playground were posted online on Mr. Takahashi's blog, where he postulated on how to make the park safe, inclusive, and fun for children. These blog posts are no longer available, but are survived by a short feature on playscapes.com, which is linked in the description. I can't help but think that Alphabet in particular is a game designed with inclusivity, educating children, and entertaining all ages in mind, a direct parallel to Mr. Takahashi's philosophy on playground design. I wouldn't specifically call Alphabet an educational game, as it doesn't focus solely on teaching children how to spell, but it does reinforce the order of the letters with the song, helps children recognize and identify the letters by sight, and even learn the keyboard. Even as an adult who's played mouse and keyboard computer games for over 15 years, if they weren't W, A, S, or D, I oftentimes had to look down to find the keys at the beginning of each level.
Op 4 eliminated. Mission successful.
Good shit, Grant.
Talking about this game, I hope to shed some light on the facet of an artist as a whole that hasn't really been explored. I believe that Alphabet is a testimony to the mastery Keita Takahashi possesses in game design. The scope of Alphabet is so limited that it could have easily expanded to become something that it wasn't originally intended to be, or just missed the mark and fell flat. But thankfully, neither of those are the case, and Alphabet stands as an underappreciated curiosity. As Alphabet was only available to the LA GameSpace Kickstarter backers, its reach hasn't been wide, and I'm sure that many people don't even know it exists. Keita Takahashi has made a number of games I don't have access to, and sadly I will not be able to cover, like the gallery game Tenya Wanya Teens, or the MMO that he worked on called Glitch, which was later shut down. This makes Alphabet even more special because it feels like a real rarity among Mr. Takahashi's portfolio, and it's a wonderful game that's still available. If you'd like to buy the game, the link will be provided in the description, along with all other sources I've used from this video. On the topic of inaccessible games, unfortunately Nobi Nobi Boy is no longer available on the PlayStation Network store. I implore you to bother Bandai Namco US on Twitter about putting it back on. It's very sad to me that such an important piece of an artist's work is now inaccessible to newcomers. That being said, I will have to wait until the game is reinstated on the PSN, or until it's functional on the RPCS3 emulator to cover it here as part of this retrospective, as when I bought the game, it was on my then roommate's PS3, which I no longer have access to. Thank you again for your time, and if you'd like to discuss Alphabet further with one of the few people that has experienced it, I'm right here. The next video in this series will be the upcoming Watam. If you'd like to stay up to date with what the channel is up to, you know how to do that. Thanks again to you, the viewer, and special thanks to Adam Saltzman for taking the time to answer my questions.